Can you believe it? One teacher's laugh, yes. A single chuckle nearly crushed a kid's pride like it was nothing. But hold on, because the truth? Oh, it strutted right in, bold as you please, wearing a shiny NASA badge. Have you ever had one of those moments that just lingers, heavy and awkward like a bad smell? You can't shake? Something gets said, and bam, the energy in the room flips upside down. Well, that's exactly what went down at Prescott Elementary, right smack in the middle of Miss Worthington's third grade classroom in sunny Chandler, Arizona. Picture this. It was career week. That annual event every kid secretly waits for, where they plop down cross-legged on a worn-out reading rug, eyes wide, watching parents march in like superheroes with their props stethoscopes, dangling, hard hats perched proudly, laptops gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Some kids, they beamed with pride, practically glowing like little stars. Others shrank into themselves, wishing they could vanish into the carpet. But here's the thing, everyone looked forward to it. Why wouldn't they? It was a break from the monotony of spelling tests and those endless times tables that drone on like a bad song. And then there was 8-year-old Jalen Brooks. Oh, this kid. He was practically bouncing in his seat that morning, a bundle of energy ready to burst. Sure, he was small for his age, but sharp as a tack. Let me tell you, he had this wide-eyed way of talking, like every single word he said carried the weight of the world. And today, every word absolutely did. His dad was supposed to show up later that afternoon, talk about a grand entrance. So when Mr. Denton, the teacher, asked the class to go around and share what their parents did for work, Jalen sat up straight, shoulders back, like he'd been rehearsing this moment for days. Can you imagine the anticipation buzzing through him? My dad, he declared, chest puffed out like a tiny warrior, works at NASA. Whoa, right? But then silence. Not the confused kind. Oh no, this was the kind where you could feel the disbelief rippling through the room. One kid let out a snort rude. Another whispered, yeah, right, under their breath, like Jalen had just spun some wild fairy tale. But the real gut punch, that came from the teacher, Mr. Charles Denton, early 40s, thinning hair, rocking khakis, and a tucked-in polo, chuckled. Not a big, booming belly laugh, mind you, but that low, dismissive kind. You know, the kind that stings, the kind that makes you feel smaller than a speck of dust. NASA, huh? He said, raising his eyebrows like Jalen had just claimed his dad built rocket ships in their backyard with duct tape and dreams. That's quite the imagination, Jalen. Maybe next time we aim for something more realistic. Ouch! Can you even believe that? A few kids giggled traitors, and one girl actually repeated it under her breath, more realistic, like it was some hilarious inside joke they were all in on. Poor Jalen. He didn't say another word after that. He just stared down at the rug, his sneakers tapping together nervously, his hands those lively, animated hands that had been waving just moments before, now curled into tight little fists on his lap. Mr. Denton? He just moved on, oblivious as ever. Didn't even pause to notice how Jalen's shoulders slumped or how the light in his eyes dimmed. How quiet he suddenly became. But one person saw it all, Mila Gwen, his desk neighbor, bless her heart. She leaned in and whispered, I believe you. How sweet is that? Jalen didn't answer, just gave a tiny nod, his eyes still glued to the floor, lost in his own world of hurt. The rest of the morning, it blurred past like a foggy dream. Jacob's dad was a firefighter, cool. Chloe's mom ran a bakery, yum. Parents came and went, got their claps, their thanks, their hugs. But Jalen, he just sat there, practically melting into the carpet, trying to disappear. At lunch, he barely touched his sandwich, can you blame him? He didn't laugh when the other boys started doing those goofy dances by the vending machines. Didn't race for the swings like he usually did with that infectious grin of his. Why? Because something about that moment stuck with him, lodged deep, It wasn't just the laugh, wasn't even the doubt, it was the ease of it. How fast a grown man, someone who's supposed to lift you up, wrote him off without a second thought. Unbelievable, right? But here's the kicker, Mr. Denton didn't know the half of it. Jalen wasn't guessing, wasn't exaggerating, wasn't making up some cool story to impress his buddies. Everything he said, 100% true. His father was an aerospace engineer. How awesome is that? Working on a Mars communications relay project for the past year. No less. He wore a NASA badge every single day, pinned to his chest like a badge of honor. And more than that, he was proud of it. So was Jalen, bursting with pride. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because to the guy standing at the front of the room, the idea of that kind of man being Jalen's father just didn't compute. Ridiculous, right? But hold tight, the day wasn't over yet. And someone was about to walk into that classroom and flip everything upside down. Rewind a bit 3 days before career week. Jalen was chilling in the garage with his dad, helping clean out bins of old cables and wires. Okay, mostly just watching, but still. He perched on an overturned milk crate, sipping a Capri Sun, a question popping out every 2 minutes like clockwork. Wait, so the rover has to wait how long to send a message back to Earth? He'd ask, all curious and eager. Dr. Kelvin Brooks, his dad, didn't even look up from the tangle of wiring in his hands. Depending on where Mars is in orbit, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, he answered, cool as a cucumber. Jalen's eyes widened big as saucers. So it's like texting someone with really bad service? Kelvin laughed. A warm, rumbling sound. Exactly like that. Space has terrible Wi-Fi. How hilarious is that? Those moments, pure gold for Jalen, his favorite kind of time. No big speeches, no complicated lessons, just simple, quiet moments with his dad where science turned funny and tricky stuff clicked because someone cared enough to explain it. Dr. Brooks was the kind of guy who could hush a room just by stepping in total presence. But at home, soft-spoken, gentle. His hands were always busy typing, holding a tool, or resting on Jalen's shoulders like a steady anchor. His work was intense wires, systems, equations galore, but when it came to his son, he broke it all down so even a third grader could feel like a genius. Isn't that the best? One night, at bedtime, Jalen hauled one of the NASA folders from his dad's desk into his room, plopping it on the bed like it was pirate treasure. Can I show them this at school? He asked, eyes sparkling with hope. Kelvin eyed the folder, a little amused. I don't think I'm allowed to bring classified stuff into show and tell, buddy. Not even one little page. He sat down beside him, the mattress dipping slightly. You don't need the folder. All you need is your voice. Just tell them what I do and tell them you're proud. Jalen hesitated. Can you feel his nerves? What if they don't believe me? Kelvin leaned back on one elbow, casual but firm. Then that's their problem, not yours. But what if they laugh? Oh, that question hung heavy. Kelvin paused. He wasn't one for sugarcoating, not when he knew the world could be tough, especially for boys who looked like his son. If they laugh, he said, voice steady, you keep your head up and remember that the truth don't need applause. It just needs to be said. Wow, what a line. Jalen nodded slowly, soaking it in. He didn't fully get it, how could he? But he trusted it, trusted his dad. That night, he grabbed a notebook and scribbled down everything he wanted to say during career week, words like orbit, spacecraft, and Mars relay in big, bubbly letters. He even drew a picture of his dad holding Earth in one hand and a satellite in the other. Adorable, right? He couldn't wait to tell his class. Couldn't wait to finally show them who his dad really was. He practiced in front of the bathroom mirror that morning, pointing like his dad did when he explained things, even tossing in a joke about space Wi-Fi perfect. But then crash. None of that mattered the second Mr. Denton laughed. Can you feel the heartbreak? At lunch that day, back at school, Jalen didn't spill a word about what he prepared. Instead, he ripped up that picture before recess, ripped it to shreds, crumpled it, and shoved it deep into the bottom of his backpack. Isn't it wild how excitement can collapse into embarrassment in a heartbeat? One moment you're soaring on top of the world, and the next you're counting the minutes until you can bolt home and pretend none of it ever happened. Poor kid. Kelvin had no clue about any of this yet. He'd been stuck in back-to-back meetings all morning, prepping a slideshow for the class, something fun, kid-friendly, with cartoons of rockets and jaw-dropping pictures of Mars. But his favorite slide? Oh, it was the last one, a photo of him and Jalen at the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, both rocking matching badges, grinning ear to ear like they just won the lottery. But back at Prescott Elementary, Jalen wasn't grinning, not even close. Why? Because sometimes all it takes is one snarky comment from the wrong person to make a kid start doubting everything he knows. How unfair is that? The rest of the day dragged on, slow as molasses. After lunch, Mr. Denton tried to slide back into his usual groove, acting like nothing awkward had gone down earlier. He rattled off spelling words, reviewed math problems, but every now and then he'd sneak a glance at Jalen. And Jalen? He never looked back, not once. He wasn't pouting, wasn't crying, just went quiet. A stillness that didn't fit an 8-year-old. Like something inside him had switched off for the day. Mila noticed, sweet Mila. And so did a couple of other kids, but nobody said a peep. Maybe they didn't know how. Can you imagine the tension? Career presentations were set for the last hour of the day finally. So as 1:30 crept closer, Mr. Denton started lining up the desks in neat rows, dragging the whiteboard easel to the front like a stage director. Parents would wait outside the classroom and get called in one by one. Showtime. Jalen barely watched the presentations. His eyes were glued to the clock. First up was Chloe's mom, who waltzed in with cupcakes and handed out little cookie-shaped business cards from her bakery cute. Then Thomas's uncle, a mechanic, rolled in with a tire pressure gauge, passing it around like it was solid gold. Kids clapped, laughed, fired off questions, but Jalen? He just sat there, palms sweaty, knees bouncing like crazy, hoping, praying that his dad wouldn't get stuck in traffic or forget or cancel. Because if Mr. Denton saw him walk in with that real NASA badge, maybe, just maybe, he'd finally get it, right? But underneath all that hope, a nasty little shadow of doubt crept in, the kind that doesn't ask questions, just whispers poison. What if he doesn't show up? What if Mr. Denton was right? What if my dad's not who I think he is? Jalen shook his head, trying to rattle those thoughts loose. Stay strong, kid. Meanwhile, Mr. Denton stood near the door, clipboard in hand, popping out now and then to wave in the next parent. He was in his element, again smiling, leading, cracking those safe little jokes of his. But something about him had shifted, hadn't it? When he called on other kids, he'd glance at Jalen once or twice, his jaw twitching like he wanted to say something, but the words stayed stuck. Maybe he knew he'd crossed a line. Maybe it hit him when he saw how Jalen deflated after that snide comment. But apologize? Not yet. He just kept the show rolling. 15 minutes left, 4 parents to go TikTok. Jalen checked the door every few seconds now, waiting for that familiar silhouette, his dad's tie, his suit jacket, that slow, steady walk. He pictured it like a movie in his head, but now he wasn't so sure how it'd end. All right, Mr. Denton said, glancing at his list. Up next we have... He stopped cold, mid-sentence, because holy cow, the door swung open, and there he was. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine the moment? Dr. Kelvin Brooks stepped into that room like a quiet storm, rocking a navy blue blazer, crisp white shirt, sharp slacks, and bam! That familiar NASA badge clipped just below his breast pocket, gleaming like a beacon of truth. His hair was trimmed close, peppered at the temples with a touch of silver that screamed wisdom. And his eyes. They scanned the room once, quick and steady, before locking onto his son. Jalen, sweet, Brave Jalen sat up so fast his chair screeched against the tile, a sound that cut through the air like a lightning bolt. His mouth popped open, but no words came out. Can you blame him? Kelvin gave a slight nod. No big, flashy smiles yet, just this calm, unshakable presence that filled the space. "Hello," he said, his voice ringing out loud enough for every ear to catch it. "I'm Dr. Brooks. I design spacecraft." Whoa, talk about dropping a bombshell. And just like that snap, the room froze. Not with laughter, not with confusion, but with pure jaw-dropping realization. But one person in that room? Oh, he wasn't ready to wrap his head around what just happened, and there he stood at the front, clutching a clipboard he suddenly didn't want anymore. Mr. Denton, caught off guard. When Kelvin walked in, there were no wild applause bursts or dramatic gasps. Nope, just silence. But let me tell you, that silence, it roared louder than a rocket launch. He didn't need props, didn't need dazzling visuals, just his voice, his presence, that badge pinned proudly to his chest, and the sheer fact that he existed, standing tall in a space where most of those kids, and definitely Mr. Denton, never expected him to be. Isn't that something? Mr. Denton blinked, his lips parting slightly like he was about to say something, anything. But the words just wouldn't come. Can you picture it? Jalen, meanwhile, was still staring, eyes wide as saucers, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing, his dad, right there, in the flesh. And honestly, part of him had started to doubt it would happen, not because he thought his dad didn't care. Oh, no. But because when someone important doubts you, it twists your mind into knots, especially when you're just a kid. But Kelvin? He didn't just show up, he was early, waiting just outside the door like a guardian angel, hearing every single word from the hallway. How incredible is that? He strolled to the front of the classroom, slow and steady. No rush, no need to prove a thing, his confidence said it all. He glanced at Mr. Denton and tossed him a polite nod, cool and measured, then turned to the class with a sparkle in his eye. "So," he said, casual as can be, "you guys learning about jobs today?" One kid, bless his curiosity, shot up his hand and blurted, "Do you fly rockets?" Kelvin chuckled, a warm, rumbling sound that eased the tension. "Not quite. I help build the systems that let rockets talk to us after they leave Earth. Think of it like this: spacecraft need phones, and we build the phones." How cool is that explanation? Another hand rocketed up, eager little minds. "Like space iPhones?" the kid asked, and Kelvin grinned, his face lighting up. "Sure, but with really bad reception." Oh, that got a laugh, a ripple of giggles spreading through the room. Even Jalen cracked a smile, his first real one all day. Can you feel the relief washing over him? Kelvin clicked a button on the screen, and up popped a photo of the Mars Relay Project satellites floating in deep orbit, a sight straight out of a sci-fi dream. Then another photo flashed, him standing in front of a massive control panel, looking every bit the genius he was. "What you're looking at," he explained, his voice steady and clear, "is part of how we stay connected to robots on another planet. We make sure they can call home." One by one, the kids leaned in, hooked except Mr. Denton, who stood off to the side, quiet for once, his eyes darting from the screen to Kelvin, then to Jalen, who now sat taller than he had all day, shoulders squared with pride. Isn't that a beautiful sight? Kelvin didn't make it personal, no need to drag up the morning's mess. He didn't even mention what happened earlier. Why would he? His presence alone shouted louder than words ever could. But just before wrapping up, he paused. Oh, that pause, and looked straight at the class. "By the way," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I heard someone earlier say that working at NASA might be unrealistic." He let that word unrealistic hang in the air just long enough to sting. Then he turned to Jalen, locking eyes with his boy. "Well," he continued, I guess some people have a different definition of realistic. And then finally, he smiled. A warm, knowing smile that lit up the room. Wow, what a moment. Jalen? He beamed for the first time all day, like the sun breaking through clouds. His fists unclenched, those tight little balls of tension melting away. He glanced around and saw it the shift. The smirks from earlier, gone, vanished. Now there were wide eyes, nods, maybe even a few glimmers of admiration lighting up his classmates' faces. Even Mila leaned over and whispered, "Told you so. How loyal is she, mister?" Denton cleared his throat, trying to regain some footing. "Thank you, Dr. Brooks. That was informative," he managed, his voice a little shaky. Kelvin gave a short nod, then peeked at the clock, ever the professional. "I've got to head back." "Mars doesn't like to be kept waiting," he said with a wink. A couple of kids laughed again, how could they not? And as he walked past Mr. Denton toward the door, he stopped for half a second. "I hope your students always feel heard," he said softly, almost a whisper, "especially the ones who dream big." Oh, that hit deep. And with that, he was gone, but the tension he left behind, that stayed thick and heavy, and now it was up to Mr. Denton to wrestle with it. What would he do? Mr. Denton stood there, frozen for a full beat after Dr. Brooks walked out, one hand gripping that clipboard like a lifeline, the other dangling uselessly by his side where, "Do you even put it in a moment like that?" He turned back to the class, but oh boy, the usual control he wielded over the room, it was gone, slipped right through his fingers. The kids weren't looking at him, nope. Their eyes were glued to Jalen. And Jalen? He was glowing, not loud or smug, just sitting there quietly, shoulders relaxed, chin up, like someone who'd finally been seen the way he deserved to be. Can you feel the triumph radiating off him? "All right," Mr. Denton said, his voice thinner than a whisper. "Let's thank Dr. Brooks for coming." A few kids clapped. Mila led the charge, of course, and some followed. A scattered applause. "Mr." Denton tried to move on like nothing had changed, business as usual. Right. But the balance had shifted. Big time. He started to introduce the next parent. But there was this hesitation in his tone, like he knew deep down that anything said now would just flop. No one cared about tire gauges or bakery cupcakes anymore. Not after that. Everyone had just witnessed a man walk in and shatter every assumption that had been festering in that classroom all year. How do you top that? After the final presentation, Mr. Denton dismissed the kids for packing up, time to go home. Backpacks zipped, chairs scraped against the tile. The usual end-of-day chaos filled the room. But Jalen? He didn't budge. He just sat there at his desk, hands folded neatly, waiting for what? When most of the kids had shuffled out, and the hallway noise swelled like a tidal wave, Mr. Denton walked over, slow and unsure. He stood beside Jalen's desk, shifting his weight between his feet like a nervous kid himself. "Hey," he started, way too casual for the weight of the moment. "Your dad seems like a pretty smart guy." Jalen looked up slowly, his gaze steady. "He is." Simple, direct boom, Mr. Denton nodded, fumbling a bit. "I can see that. I wanted to say I may have jumped the gun earlier." Jalen didn't respond. Why should he? Mr. Denton cleared his throat, pushing through the awkwardness. "What I meant to say was sometimes teachers people make mistakes. We don't always realize when something we say comes out wrong." "Oh, come on. Really?" Jalen stared at him for a second, then dropped the hammer. "But you laughed." "Ooh, that landed like a punch, mister." Denton's face tightened, caught. "Yeah," he admitted, voice low. "I did. And I'm sorry for that. It wasn't right. I should have listened." Jalen didn't nod, didn't soften the blow for him. Why make it easy? Mr. Denton pressed on, desperate now. "I hope you'll give me a chance to do better." Jalen stood up slowly, slung his backpack over one shoulder, cool as ice, and headed for the door. Just before he left, he glanced back and said, "It wasn't your imagination. That's really my dad." Mic drop. And then he walked out. See ya. Mr. Denton stood there, one hand still on the empty desk, the other shoved deep in his pocket, like he could hide from the moment. The hallway noise faded. The classroom emptied. But the weight of what happened? Oh, it lingered hanging heavy in the space, etched into Mr. Denton's face, floating in the air like a lesson begging to be learned. It wasn't just about being wrong. No, it was about what that moment could have done to a kid's belief in himself, in his family, in his own voice. And now Mr. Denton couldn't shake the echo of his own words. Maybe next time we aim for something more realistic. That wasn't just a comment. It was a wall he'd tried to build around a child's imagination. And guess what? It crumbled spectacularly. But not every apology gets shouted from the rooftops. And not every lesson plays out in front of a crowd. That evening, the Arizona sun dipped below the rooftops, painting the sky in gorgeous streaks of orange and pink, nature's masterpiece. Jalen sat at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal dinner by choice, because why not? While Kelvin leaned against the counter, sipping from a chipped mug that read Space Nerd in faded blue letters. Neither of them said much at first, just a comfortable quiet, you know. Then Jalen looked up, breaking the stillness. Did you hear him? Kelvin raised an eyebrow, curious dad mode activated. Your teacher? Jalen nodded, his face scrunching. When I said you worked at NASA, he laughed, like it was a joke. Kelvin didn't rush to answer, thoughtful as ever. He set the mug down, walked over, and sat across from his son. Yeah, he said finally. I heard. Straight to the point. Jalen frowned, stirring his cereal slow and sad. Why do people do that? Kelvin's voice dropped low, wise and steady. Because sometimes they see the world in a small box, and when something doesn't fit inside it, they laugh. It's not always hate. Sometimes it's just ignorance. But either way, it's not your job to shrink for them. Pow truth bomb. Jalen kept stirring, lost in thought. I didn't feel smart anymore. Kelvin leaned in, serious now, dad mode on full blast. Don't let someone else's doubt erase your truth. You know who you are. You know who I am. That's what matters. Jalen nodded, just a tiny bit hope peeking through. And you did good today, Kelvin added, his voice softening. You told the truth. You held your ground. That's brave. Jalen gave a small smile finally. A spark. The next morning at school, oh, what a difference a day makes. Kids who'd laughed the day before, they were suddenly clamoring to sit next to him. Can you believe the turnaround? One even asked, wide-eyed, has your dad ever met an astronaut? Another piped up, can you bring one of his space tools to class? Jalen didn't brag, didn't puff up, just answered simply and kept it moving. Cool as ever. Mila walked beside him at recess and grinned. They believe you now. Jalen shrugged, classic Jalen. They didn't have to. Mila's grin widened. Still nice, though. Isn't she the best? In the staff lounge, Mr. Denton sat alone for a while, thinking hard, before slipping a note into Jalen's cubby. Not typed, not formal, just a folded-up sheet of paper, raw and real. Jalen found it after lunch, unfolding it quietly. It read, Jalen, I was wrong. You shouldn't have had to prove anything to us. Keep dreaming big, Mr. Denton. He didn't smile, didn't read it twice, just folded it back up, slipped it into his backpack, and zipped it shut. He hadn't needed the apology, nah, but maybe someone else needed to write it. Deep, right, that afternoon. As the final bell rang freedom, Jalen walked out with his head high, not because of what the class thought now, but because of what never wavered. His dad had shown up, heck, yeah. He was an engineer, and most important of all, Jalen had told the truth, even when no one believed him. Somewhere inside that classroom, a teacher got a wake-up call, a lesson he'd forgotten along the way. Kids carry dreams bigger than most adults' expectations. And when we brush those dreams off, we don't just shrink their imagination, we shrink their voice. Ouch, that stings. Jalen's voice. It stayed loud, clear, and real, unstoppable. Because the truth, it doesn't need permission. It just needs someone brave enough to say it out loud. If you've ever been doubted, overlooked, or told to be more realistic, remember this. Other people's limits don't define your path. Keep showing up. Keep speaking your truth. And if you're ever in a spot to believe in someone when nobody else will do it, you might just change. Oh, what a story. These paragraphs tell it. Hits me right in the gut. To me, this is a blazing reminder of how our lifestyles and social views can either lift someone up or crush them in an instant. I'm passionate about this. We've got to stop boxing people in based on what we think is realistic. Jalen's experience, his pride stomped on by a teacher's careless laugh, screams a truth. I feel deep in my bones, kids, adults, all of us, deserve to dream big without some narrow-minded gatekeeper deciding what's possible. Who are we to judge someone's reality based on our own limited lens? It infuriates me that Mr. Denton's snap judgment almost dimmed Jalen's light, and it's a wake-up call. Don't we all deserve better than that? I'm all in for a lifestyle that celebrates boldness, where we cheer each other on instead of tearing down dreams with smirks or skepticism. Socially, this hits hard too. How often do we let stereotypes or lazy assumptions dictate who we think someone can be? Dr. Brooks walking in with that NASA badge wasn't just a win for Jalen. It was a defiant middle finger to every doubter who thinks they can define someone else's worth. I say, let's live loud, embrace the unexpected, and damn it, believe in each other. Ignorance isn't an excuse, it's a choice. And I'm choosing to root for the underdog, the dreamer, the kid with the guts to speak up. Jalen's courage and his dad's quiet strength. That's the vibe I'm here for. Unapologetic, real, and unstoppable. Let's ditch the small boxes and build a world where every voice gets to soar. Who's with me?